system chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak don't survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Faces on the screen, flashing perfect teeth. But behind those eyes, just rotting greed. Politicians turn to whispers beneath. They all just get what they need. Whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Bullpen. We've got a another fun week because we get to talk about all the appointments that Trump has made, and it's been a lot of them. So we're going to do a deep dive on that.
Yep.
Right off the bat, we've got to acknowledge Little Chad just became a member. Thank you, Little Chad.
Yeah, I can't believe I had forgotten to click through and do that. So sorry about that. Everyone watching the show should be a member. I really want to see all the little symbols next to people's names in the chat, but we can live with it for right now if you haven't.
I think I even made some half-assed emojis. So
Half-assed emojis. Let me check the YouTube chat real quick and see if I've got them.
I'm still learning how to do all this monetization stuff and membership stuff. So
There
I
we
think the
go.
emojis are in there, but
Yep, I just did a chat with all of the useless emojis.
and yes, we do have a new intro coming. I've got the perfect video for it. It just, for whatever reason, DaVinci Resolve will not load that video in, and it's giving me trouble. So I'll figure out how to get around that, and we'll get it fixed. But hopefully, the last week that we have to see Kamala Harris for anything. So, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. I am really intrigued by a lot of the choices we got this week. It's going to be some fun conversation as we go through these appointment deep dives. I can definitely say I messaged you about it. I was like, there was a curveball I didn't see coming. I think all of us didn't see coming for DOJ. So
Yeah,
fun.
yeah. It's he's making some picks that are definitely, I think, loyalty picks. I think after the last time when half of his cabinet was working directly against him and half of the appointments were just not listening to him, he's going with people that are going to be loyal to his vision for what he wants to do. And I'm all for it. I mean, that's what the mandate was put there for. We want him to make changes. So, Where do you want to start?
Let's see. Do we want to go right into looking at the picks? I can pull up the infographic for the picks so far from the BBC site if we want to do that.
Yeah, we can take a quick look and then we can start going through them. We'll talk
Yep.
about which ones are going to have the most trouble and which ones we think will be there pretty easily. So let's see. Add.
Yeah, so I've blown this up, and and we'll be scrolling down because I'll just do real quick. It's got everybody that's been announced for the main cabinet so far. You're going to notice that Tulsi's not on the list because she's DNI is not considered, even though it's appointed a full cabinet position. It's it should be on the list, but
Right.
it's not.
We all know
So
she's there.
yeah, so we know no Tulsi's going to be part of it, and we'll talk about that too, because that's going to definitely factor into my thoughts on who's going to have the most opposition to them.
Hmm.
All right, so I think first and right up the top, we got Marco Rubio was nominated for state. It's a pretty standard. He is probably the him and Burgum are probably the most standard cabinet type appointment picks.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio has been on, as senator now for God, well over a decade.
Yeah, it's got
He's
to be close to 12 years.
Yeah, so he's got that experience. I think he's been on the Foreign Relations Committee for most of that time. So that's the type of senator who specializes in trying to become Secretary of State, if not president, because they want to work up their foreign policy bona fides.
Well, he tried the president thing. It didn't work out too well for him.
Yeah, little Marco didn't make it
Little
to president,
Marco.
but he's going to make it to Foggy Bottom. So when that's the by the way the slang for the DC area for the State Department is located in Foggy Bottom, DC.
Yeah.
So they just kind of say that's where you're going to Foggy Bottom. That's the name of the metro stop in the part of Washington D.C. where Department of State is. So that's where he's going to be hanging out. My thought on Marco Rubio is I think at this point he's gone pretty full MAGA committed as part of given his last reelection and where he's been since Trump was elected in 2016. I'm not really worried about it the way other people are. I know he's more hawkish, but I don't worry that he's not going to execute Trump foreign policy. Like Marco Rubio there, it's at Secretary of State is not going to keep Trump from making the deal to try to end the Ukraine war or
Right.
things like that. So I know there's other people who are more concerned. What do you think?
Um, I'm fine with Rubio. I think he's kind of like Ted Cruz. I mean, they all kind of came up in that same time period, and I mean, they do some good stuff and some bad stuff. I mean, the thing that killed him years ago was taking a drink of water. So that and getting on Trump's bad side during the debates and everything. But he's kind of come in line. I think he'll be fine for this position. I mean, it's Secretary of State. If John Kerry can do it, anybody can. So
Yeah, my only real concern with Rubio is that I haven't seen all the reporting of mass proposed resignations when he takes office, which is just
right,
disappointing. Like a lot of these other picks, like Hegseth and
and
Gates
RFK,
and RFK, are apparently inspiring, like waves of resignations to be effective in January of 2025.
the
And
swamp
then
clearing itself out for us.
swamp self deportation is just so
Yeah,
it gives me the warm fuzzies.
it's
That's what it
I mean, it's either we fire you or you fire yourself. We're
and
fine with you firing
it's a
yourself.
lot easier with because if we fire the civil servants, they're gonna be lawsuits. They're gonna try to use like some, civil service protections to try to fight it. And eventually I think the Supreme Court sides with Trump and gives him the carte blanche as the unitary executive theory under the Constitution to fire whomever he wants. But that doesn't mean it won't take time and resources to fight it. So it
Yeah.
is always nicer to let them resign.
Yep.
I see Eric's chat over there about Rubio
The Gang
worries
of Eight.
people because of his Gang of Eight amnesty and neocon interventionist tendencies. So this is something where if you go back to the interview where Trump was talking about having um, Bolton on his team, why he liked having Bolton on his team, because when he was dealing with foreign governments, they knew he had somebody like Bolton there just going war, 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 war.
Yeah.
So it gave him like the bad cop to be the good cop. So
Don't make
I
me lose him. I'll turn him loose.
yeah, so I think having and Hegseth to a certain degree is also a little bit hawkish. Now the difference is I think Hegseth is hawkish the way I am, which is if you do something to mess with a United States interest or citizen, we will go there and f you up, and then
Yeah,
we
we're in
leave.
it to win it, not
We yeah,
yeah.
we get so the way we should be doing things, like with Afghanistan. This in hindsight's 2020, but this is my thought on how Afghanistan should have gone is we should have gone in, we wrecked house and got rid of the Taliban within a month in Afghanistan when we did it in 2001, and we should
Yeah.
have left. We should have immediately left. And they were like, "Well, there's going to be a power vacuum." Fine, that's not our problem. This is this
Yeah.
is evident. You know, like the way you make sure that people are sad are worried about what will happen to them if they mess with the United States is to show that we can project power and not be stuck in a quagmire afterwards.
Yeah, shock and awe should be the first and last
Yeah,
attack.
which is why the one smart thing, not one, but the main smart thing Daddy Bush did, HW, in 1990 and 91 with the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, was we went in, we liberated Kuwait, we effed up the entire Iraqi military, and then we pulled back and we left
Yeah.
them just strong enough so that Iran couldn't take over and be the regional hegemon.
Spread. Yeah.
Yeah. Which was the perfect scenario, right? You go in, you show that the United States can whoop your ass. We show that like our tanks, our Abrams are taking out these Russian tanks en masse. Our air power is unrivaled, and it makes people worried about messing with us for a decade.
Yeah. And that's the peace through strength. And
Yep.
that should be the foreign policy. I think that is Trump's foreign policy is peace through strength. And he's basically he's he's made so many threats to so many world
Yep.
leaders that it's like, yeah, they all know that he's crazy enough to do something if he had to, but he's not looking to.
Yeah,
He's the only
and like
president who didn't have a war start under him.
yeah,
I mean,
and Hegseth as DOD, let's be honest, he's going to be spending at least the 4 years that he's committed to being like that Trump's definitely going to be there dealing with just dewoking and trying to rectify the flag officer level of the United States military, which is
yeah,
completely infiltrated, captured, and a problem. So I don't think we're going to be starting any wars. I mean, the Navy, and I think if Slender's in chat, he can speak to this. The Navy is in shambles. Like Trump spent his entire first term trying to rebuild and get the Navy ships back up to, physical, good, ready to deploy state, because you don't understand a blue water navy takes a lot of maintenance. There's a lot of
yeah,
like for if you've got a third
upkeep.
of your ships are always in dry dock being maintained to go back out under rotation to be deployed.
Yeah,
So the current navy, and that's why you're seeing navies across the globe have issues when they start getting these woke hires and they're not doing maintenance. And you've got was like that first New Zealand or Australian like lesbian admiral crashes that ship immediately.
right.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of just fixing before we can engage in any kind of stuff. Now, luckily, we still have strategic advantage for projecting power through air missiles and other things where if somebody messes with us, I think what we'd see is more along the lines of the Soleimani strike, where what Trump will order is surgical strikes on people who are at the top of the food chain rather than trying to engage in any kind of ground combat with US forces.
Right.
So I
And we
think
still have more
Heggs,
carrier groups than anybody in the
yep,
world. So
yeah,
Hex,
and
the thing with
Hegseth is
Hegseth, I mean,
he
they're
wrote a
the
book about
leftists are going
yeah,
nuts this morning already. That he basically just said in an interview yesterday. Yeah, we're just going to clear out all the DEI. We need none of it. If you're not there to be a fighter, then there is no purpose in you being in the military. So I think he's got the right mentality. I think he's going to have trouble. Um, getting appointed
Yeah,
or
this
getting
is
the
why
appointment.
I think
So
Hegseth and Gates are my number one seeds for recess appointments.
yeah, Eric Myers is saying that as well, and I think me and you both agree. Followed by Tulsi, I think is what we had kind
I
of talked
think, yeah,
about.
Tulsi has a better shot at actually getting confirmed than I think Gates and Hegseth did. And
Yeah,
it's not
Gates is
so,
hated.
yeah,
So
and Tulsi is my number three most likely to get recess appointed. And it's not, and I want chat to understand, I'm not saying it because of their background issues. It's not because of allegations against Hegseth out of San Diego with casually bombing a woman. It's not because of Matt Gates with his allegations. It's because you have to look at the entrenched interests and how misaligned entrenched interest and projected cabinet pick are. And Hegseth and Gates represent the clearest, like, we're going to be a wrecking ball to entrenched bureaucracy. Where a lot, I mean, we're talking trillions of dollars when you factor it. Like the DoD is trillions of dollars in assets and budget per year, because it's not just what they budget per year, it's the actual assets they have already. If you
right,
combine them together, it's over $1 trillion+ in value that he's going to be running. And it's not because I'm not saying he can't do it, I'm saying he is misaligned to the people who want money to go to Raytheon and Booz Allen Hamilton and all this money that flows from the US taxpayer to these corporations
yeah,
as a result of warmongering. And Gates, on the other hand, you people don't understand how much the DOJ funnels money. Like if the three agencies, the DoD funnels money to the corporation, like big corporations, including Amazon, even because Amazon Web Services does a lot for DoD. The DOJ is actually the number one provider of funding for NGOs that are left wing aligned, because the way they do it is through friendly lawsuits where a voting rights group will sue somebody somewhere under a under a federal law. The DOJ will then make a settlement where they enforce money being flowed from the people being sued to the non-governmental organization as part of the settlement. Obama was one of the guys who really refined this process with Eric Holder,
hmm,
and they flowed billions of dollars to, Act Blue type organizations and Soros aligned organizations that help then put boots on the ground for democratic policies.
community organizing.
And then the third one is HHS, where RFK is going to go, which is the home of funneling protection and money to big pharma. And so those, if you want to know why those three guys are probably going to get the hardest, along with Tulsi, who would be overseeing the intelligence community, which represents the power flow of information, that's why those are the ones that are going to go hardest against,
Yeah,
because
they're
each of them
the three
are,
most important picks, I think.
yeah, and because each of them represents a clear and present danger to the status quo for those groups more than any administration ever.
The Triforce of Power in the United States
Yeah.
government.
Yeah, so that's why
Well, and then
yeah.
you've got Doge being created, even if it's not actually created. And one of the first things I would like to see them do is say, we've got to get rid of the if you don't spend your whole budget, you don't get an increase next year.
Yeah, so that's what's called baseline budgeting.
Right.
This is a big deal, and this comes up if you work in GovCon. It's called government contracting.
Hmm.
September is your big month where you've got to spend the coffers, right? You're because the federal year is, it's actually the same as Disney, right? The federal government doesn't
The
work
fiscal year.
on a calendar year; they work on a fiscal year where it runs October to September. So September is the end of the quote unquote year. So that's when the government agencies go on a spending spree of your tax dollars because they haven't had to use them, which is a shocking bullshit, right?
But
Of the
you've got to
federal
zero
government.
it out so that you
Yeah,
get the automatic 10% increase or whatever it is,
exactly.
which, I mean, that is exactly the government spending that I think Vivek and Elon are going to be going after, besides just cutting departments altogether or removing the funding from certain departments. I think that's one of the things that they've got to tackle first is no, we need a budget that is actually what every portion of the government actually needs, not let's just spend just because we have to, because
Yes.
that's not a good use of our tax
Yeah. So
dollars.
like
And
what
I think
Brahma's
everybody has
talking
said that
about.
for years.
Yeah, so what Brahma's talking about is, as I said, the baseline budgeting is if you spend all of your budget, the way it works when it goes into the next federal budget, they start with that as the starting point where you're going to get all of that funding, and then they do the cost of living or an inflation
The
adjustment
COLA adjustment, yeah.
plus whatever new programs they want to start spending on top of that. What a lot of people have proposed is the start from zero budgeting, where every year each agency of the government, the bureaucratic side, has to go to Congress and actually submit a budget with what they need for the year. Like, hey, we plan to do these things this year, so we need this money, and actually justify every single dollar they're asking for.
Right.
And that is
Which is
not
how it
what's
should
done.
work. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what a budget is.
So the way it's sneaky baseline budgeting too, because did you know that we're still paying all the COVID money too?
I
And
know
here,
that there was a lot of it that hadn't been put out there yet,
no,
even
but
though it's
here's
been
how they do
approved.
that, because they work the money in. So when they do these when they did the COVID emergency spending bills, they worked it into the standard budget through omnibus bills and continuing funding.
Yeah.
That then goes into the next year as baseline budgeting.
So they basically took a large increase in their budget
Exactly.
and never took it back out,
Yep.
even though the COVID thing is done. So,
Yeah, and this was one of the ways the Obama administration hyperinflated the federal budget. Is they came in and did a lot of their cash for clunkers and stimulus programs and shovel ready projects through their bills,
yep.
and those got integrated in. And even though they were supposedly quote unquote emergency spending and stimulus actions, the way they did it is they worked it into the budget process, so then it became part of baseline budgeting every year forward
Right.
for those agencies.
And there is no rollback until somebody decides to roll
Nope.
it back.
Yep. Which is crazy, because this is why it was so crazy when Boehner was in there after he got in 2010 or 12 with the 2010 with the um, Freedom Caucus and all the other guys, and the working it where he proposed for every like for every budget, like if you need a new dollar, you have to cut a dollar, like
Right.
to not grow the budget, and everyone acted like that was the biggest crime against
That's
humanity.
crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, kind of like Trump with his if we're going to add a new regulation, you're going to cut two regulations.
exactly. So this is why that stuff should all be on the table. Hopefully Doge is doing things like that. So
Well, and they
that's
don't have any power to actually do anything.
yeah.
They're essentially advisors at this point.
Yeah, it's a blue
You
ribbon
can't
panel.
create, yeah, you can't create a new committee without Congress being involved. But
Yeah.
they are going to be advisors that are heavily leaned into. It sounds like
Now,
so.
what's interesting is where they could have impact is that, again, under the unitary executive theory of governance, if they make proposals to President Trump that could be enacted solely through
Via
executive
executive
action,
order. Yeah.
then yes, they could end up having it. And I think there's a lot of room, especially when it comes to cutting employees. Now, cutting entire departments, as much as we dream about hopefully having that kind of stuff, that would require Congress actually doing that through, and they can do it through budget reconciliation,
Yeah.
but they have to put it into a budget side where they agree and remove funding and authority. Because if Congress has allocated dollars to it, the Supreme Court has said the executive can't just unilaterally, because we don't have line item vetoes in the
Right.
US. The executive can't just like negate that. Like the Congress directs where the money is supposed to spend, and the executive executes Congress's will.
Yeah. Congress has control
Yeah.
of the purse strings. That's how it's supposed
Yeah.
to be, at least.
Yeah. So Hegseth and then now Gates are, we've talked, like Gates is going to be the Gates is the curveball that I didn't expect. And I understand, looking at it, I understand why he went with Gates, because if you think of how Trump's first term was log jammed, it all came out of Sessions being ineffective and a little bitch.
Well, Sessions recusing himself.
Yes,
which got a special prosecutor appointed,
which he never should have done.
Yep.
Because
So
God
yeah,
knows,
Trump wants somebody who's actually loyal
Yep.
to the MAGA movement, and Gates has been one of the most outspoken loyalist of the MAGA
And I kind
movement,
of
even if you
appreciate,
don't like him. But
so regarding Gates's like baggage, right? We're looking at a guy who clearly everybody dislikes in entrenched bureaucratic government. I think that's
yeah,
not even up for debate. It just is what it is. That's what how they feel about him. But which brings me to the point that if they had had the goods on Gates, the Biden DOJ would have prosecuted him.
yeah, this has been going around for what, 7
Yeah.
years now, at least. I mean, this rumor has been out there
So
forever.
what
Kind
this
of like the
tells you,
Jim Jordan
yeah.
thing. I mean, it's like anybody who does speak out and who is effective in arguing, and Gates is an attorney. I mean, that's why some of his cross examinations in some of these committee hearings are so good. Is he is an attorney? He is trained to do
And
this.
he's also someone who's been attacked. And this is why I believe Gates is probably innocent. And it's not because I have any special knowledge. It's that I know to the deepest fiber of my being, if the Biden DOJ had any ability to prosecute this guy and actually win, they would have gone balls to the wall to do it. And
Yeah,
instead, the only thing that came out of this case with Gates allegedly sex trafficking was other people being arrested for trying to blackmail him
right.
and nothing
If they
against
had the
him.
goods, it would have come out. Just like
The-
if Trump was actually on the
yeah.
Epstein flight list, that it would have been out there. I mean,
Yep.
it wouldn't just be rumors or fake lists of things. It would actually have come out, even if it had cost a whole bunch of other people a whole lot. It would have
Oh yeah.
taken out Trump.
I
So
mean, when they leaked Trump's taxes, their alleged holy grail, all we found out is that Trump paid way more in taxes one year and then got credit for it the next few years.
right,
And that was the big smoking gun.
yeah.
Whoop de doo. so I
The
think
problem with
Gates
Gates
is,
is he's pissed off both sides.
yeah, and that's
He's
where
pissed
yeah.
off a lot of people with the move against Kevin McCarthy because it was ultimately completely ineffective.
Well,
You made the move without having a plan
yeah.
behind that move, and that was kind of dumb. I mean,
And part of the reason he made that move was the House Ethics Committee being allowed to investigate him ad nauseum for bullshit. And I get
yeah,
that. But it doesn't mean that making the move to try to we've talked about this. The move to remove McCarthy did nothing but handicap the Republican majority in the House. It didn't really move the needle. As we saw, Johnson didn't really do anything different.
but in all
So,
reality, they were already handicapped
yeah.
because with that slim of a majority, nothing's going through either way. Plus, you don't have the Senate, so nothing's going to go through from you know both both houses of Congress. So there was nothing that was ever going to happen either way under that House leadership. So all you could do is change the rules a little bit, which they did, and ultimate, like I said, ultimately it was ineffective, and it made the Republicans kind of look like chickens running around with their heads cut off. I mean, it was kind of just a dumb move.
Yeah, so
But
I think Gates, he's my number one seed for getting a recess appointment. I don't think Trump abandons the pick. I think
no,
Trump, I've seen this described online too. Trump uses this as a Kobayashi Maru to really just test who's going to be working with him to do his agenda and who's still all about themselves.
which has been what's kind of been fun over the past week and a half of these appointments coming out. I think he's literally just sitting back going, all right, we're going to throw out Tulsi Gabbard and see how they react. Now we're going to do Hegseth, watch him go crazy for a day or two. And then just to see how far we can push it, let's throw Matt Gaetz into the mix and watch them really go nuts. I think he's probably having a whole bunch of fun
Well,
just throwing out name after name after name,
there is
which are
this,
good picks, but at the
but there's
same
also a
time,
method to the
it's going to
madness
send them
too,
crazy. Well,
because
they don't stay in the conversation more than a day or two
that's
because you got the
correct.
next person coming.
Normally in a regular cabinet, you might get one pick that draws this kind of level of scrutiny, and then the Washington D.C. press will like latch onto that pick like a pit bull and try to end it.
Yeah,
What Trump has done is he's overwhelmed the system. Like they have
And not by doing it
RFK,
all at once,
they
but
have
by
Hegseth,
staggering it.
yeah, they have Tulsi, they have RFK Jr. and Gates. And which one of them is going to be getting the headline? Like when the New York Times decides they want to tank a nomination, who do they try? Like you're, and I was talking to
Yeah,
my
who you
father
put
about
on the
this.
front page instead of page
Yeah,
7.
this is where I was talking to my father about this as a strategy, and he goes, "Well, they'll just put everybody on there." And I said, "Well, once
Not
they keep,"
effective.
I said, "once they do it for everybody, it becomes background noise because it
Yeah,
just drowns itself out."
if you're not targeting one, if you start targeting everybody, it just looks like you're being petty. If you're targeting one, then you can maybe get away with targeting one. But if they try to go after everybody, it just looks like, well, no matter who he puts up, they're going to target. So, yeah, I mean, they're not going to be effective in trying to do this. And Eric, I think we'll be getting that pick today or tomorrow, honestly.
CIA director is already picked. It's
FBI.
Is it Ratliff is already picked for
Yeah,
CIA.
Radcliffe.
And I don't think he'll name Cash Patel for FBI yet, just because he has to fire Ray before he can.
I think Ray said he was going to leave before
Nope,
Trump can get in
nope.
either way, didn't he?
Ray said that he's serving his term.
Okay.
That basically Ray's going to make him fire him.
Fine with Trump.
Which I
You're
mean,
fired.
it's he's
It's one of
allowed,
his
like,
favorite things to say.
yeah. So he's got to fire Ray and then install his one. So that one is something where he can't.
Can't
Unfortunately,
announce it
he
early.
can't announce it early because he has to wait till he's in charge to fire Christopher Ray. Now, I suppose, I mean, there's be
He
nothing to
could
say he
signal.
couldn't announce his intent to do that, but
Yeah, he could signal that because, especially that one, if he signals that that's what he's going to do, they'll latch onto that either way, and that one may take some of the heat off of all of the others. But yeah,
I
we'll
mean,
see.
the good old fashioned lawfare blog, which is where all the left wing strategies usually originate, has basically labeled Christopher Ray a dead man walking. So it's the biggest like known thing in DC is that he is getting fired.
Yeah,
So he's but Cash Patel, they pretty much he's telegraphed Cash Patel as being the guy who would do it, because that's why they're going again so hard in the paint. You got Andy McCabe out there and all these other people trying to come out talking about how Cash Patel is going to get, there's going to be mass resignations again. Like, this isn't a selling point for him.
well, Cash Patel said he wants to just turn the building into a museum.
Yeah.
So
Here's the dirty little secret: the FBI has never been a good non-corrupt organization from its inception. With J. Edgar Hoover, the FBI has been a personal power coalition designed to manipulate people in government.
yep,
I mean, we know that this is crazy. We know for a fact, because it got leaked, that J. Edgar Hoover had FBI files and used them to blackmail public officials since the 1930s. I mean, hell, it's known that he personally orchestrated getting Charlie Chaplin, you know, who was like was it removed from the country because he thought, because he didn't like the way Chaplin talked to him
right,
and wouldn't play ball, even though Chaplin's making movies like The Great Dictator, where it's clearly making fun of an enemy of America, and he wasn't like, he's not pro communist or anything like that.
right,
But again, he pissed off J. Edgar Hoover, who used his outside influence to do that. And then Hoover spent the rest of his life blackmailing Martin Luther King, blackmailing this person, blackmailing that person. I mean, Lyndon Johnson talked about it there's White House, like the person who installed the White House taping system was Lyndon Johnson. And there are amazing tapes that you can go listen to of him talking in the Oval Office about all this stuff. It's also where you can find out that the Great Society programs were his conspiracy to basically convince black people to vote for Democrats when they're not actually helping them.
right.
And he used another colorful word for black people that you can't say ever.
Yep, we've I've heard the tape, but
Yeah,
I'm sure
so
most of our chat has heard those
yeah,
tapes.
yeah. So I mean, and the FBI is never the FBI has never foiled a terrorist attack on the U.S. that they knew about, and they've known about a lot coming. They've been, you know, what's the it's the funny
In
thing that you
fact,
see on
the thing
Twitter.
we hear most,
They were
known to the
known to the
FBI.
FBI. It's they use that Simpsons like meme. Say the thing. The shooter was known to us. The the
In
perpetrator was
almost
known to
every
us.
instance that we have seen over the past 20 years, the shooter was known.
Yeah. And yeah, so like, and in fact, not even known, like personally interviewed, like the Pulse nightclub shooter turned in by his father, interviewed by the FBI. They let him go, and he goes and does it.
Yep.
You know, for as much as we hate Vladimir Putin and Russia, allegedly, Vladimir Putin and the Russian government notified the US and the FBI about the Zarniev brothers being a terrorist risk because they were going to parts of Chechnya and learning bad things. And you
What
know
did we
what?
do
The
about it?
nothing.
Nothing.
We've got all these other shooters known to the FBI. They interviewed them. No, did you stop them? No, they didn't seem
No,
like a problem.
they haven't done anything yet.
So the FBI doesn't, you know, like, what does the FBI actually do that's worthwhile?
There
They were
doesn't seem to be a whole lot.
so they got famous on the Lyndon the you know, Lucky Lindy when his baby got kidnapped because it was considered a federal crime for kidnapping across state lines.
Yeah.
And they didn't, it's not like they returned the child alive, and it's not
Nope.
like they got the right people the first time. This is the FBI. Like, if you look at the details of that case, it's not really a good plus for the FBI. And then they got a lot of headlines in the 30s for chasing down interstate gangsters like Bonnie and Clyde and Dillinger. And what did they do? They did public executions of these people. Especially Dillinger, they purposely let him walk out of a movie theater with a crowd of other regular people and then gunned him down.
Yeah.
This is would and with paying no mind to the fact that they helped injure other innocent bystanders who had nothing to do with Dillinger.
And I think most people just believe at this point that half of the things that the FBI is investigating and prosecuting are people that they have on their own payrolls at some point. Or, I mean, yeah, the FBI as a whole, the CIA and the FBI don't seem to serve enough purpose to keep them intact the way they are at the moment. You need to tear them down and build them back up from scratch, I think.
I mean, the CIA was created out of the OSS, which was a military intelligence division. And honestly, my thought is the foreign intelligence should have never been separated out of the DoD. It should have just been specific to military, because it's a defense function, right? You're
Right.
protecting the homeland against that. And so once we created a civilian intelligence branch, there's all sorts of things that went wrong. Having that organization having a clandestine budget and capabilities that we're never allowed to really question or think about.
Well,
And
and we
so,
see them operate, the CIA operate on American soil way too often for an organization that is not allowed to operate on American soil.
yeah, and like Slender brings up with the NPI, like, yeah, the Whitmer kidnapping comes to mind. Whereas that there's
Yeah.
18 people and 15 are in the FBI. There was like three or four, you know.
How much of Antifa is FBI?
How I know the Patriot Front is like 99% FBI.
Almost guaranteed. I mean, January 6th, probably some involvement by the FBI,
Pretty sure
and
that the
they will
pipe
not
bomber
admit
that
it.
they've never found that
That
planted those pipe
the Secret
bombs.
Service dogs just could not find that bomb that was sitting right there on the bench that they had swept just a little bit before. Yeah, and why was
Correct.
Kamala Harris at that building rather than at the Senate?
Yep. So, uh,
Yeah.
clearly we have a shared opinion on that institution and the other one.
Yes.
All right, moving. So Gates, Hegseth, they're both probably recess appointments just because of the institutions.
Rubio should get in just fine.
Rubio fly
Burgum
right through. Burgum's going to
easily.
fly right through. He is. I mean, those are the two standard picks. Burgum and Rubio are. You know, Burgum's a governor of a western state, so he's interior. tends to usually be people from the Mountain West, or the Dakotas, somebody who's
Yeah.
basically got it. Because if you're a governor of those states, you have extensive experience dealing with federally managed lands.
Yep.
So they tend to go
Usually
from
comes
there.
from Montana, the
Yeah.
Dakotas, Colorado,
Yeah.
somewhere deep in the middle
He'll
of the
be
country.
fine. Um, Kennedy at Health and Human Services. That's another. I think he gets confirmed, but it's going to be like 50, and it's going to maybe be Vance tie breaking. I think he might lose a couple,
Yeah. Collins or
but
Murkowski, definitely.
I think HHS is. I think there's enough people who will give him, because RFK was a big part of the coalition that helped Trump win.
Yep.
So I think he gets some credit for that and ends up possibly also because Gates and Hegseth absorb some of the light, like the ire,
The lightning rods.
the
Yeah.
lightning rod stuff. So I think he's got a more regular shot at being confirmed, although it might be like a 50-50 with a tiebreaker,
Yeah.
because he's he's going to go hard. He's going after pharma, and he's that's going there's
Do you have
trillions
the
of dollars
tweet?
on that.
Do you have the tweet from this morning?
The New York Times one.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me pull that up. I've got it saved.
I had it saved somewhere, but I'm not finding it in my list. The weird thing with Twitter and bookmarks is sometimes it'll just skip to like 3 months back when you're just scrolling through trying to find something from today.
Yep, there's the. So the New York Times decided to fact check RFK. Mr. Kennedy has singled out Fruit Loops as an example of a product with too many artificial ingredients, questioning why the Canadian version has fewer than the US version. But he was wrong. The ingredient list is roughly the same, although Canada's has natural colorings made from blueberries and carrots, while the US product contains red dye 40, yellow dye 5, and blue dye 1, as well as butylated
Butylated hydro.
hydroxytoluene, or BHT, a lab made chemical used for freshness, according to the ingredient label. I'm pretty sure I don't understand why they said that was wrong, since they just listed out all the chemicals that are in the American version, not in the Canadian version.
Exactly. We're using dyes. They're using natural dyes from blueberries and carrots. We're using chemically created dyes. And it's been coming out more and more and more how much our food is affecting us in the US. I mean, most countries don't even allow some of the American food into their country because of what's in it, the preservatives
Yep.
and all the chemicals. And, who's to say that it isn't that is causing some of the mental illnesses in the US, because there seems to be a ton of them.
Now, one
So,
of the tweets that got me most excited, it was from
mhm,
RFK Jr. I think Friday night. Let me find it. Hopefully he's.
the American version glows in the dark. Yeah.
Let me see if it might be under his replies. I got to find this tweet where I
Yeah,
saved
Soul,
it.
we saw the pic of Trump and Elon and RFK on the plane. RFK's face was, yeah, he didn't look real happy to have McDonald's in front of him, but
Well, this is where. All right, so
that's Trump.
I'm gonna share the screen because this is it's RFK response. Someone showed the picture of all the McDonald's,
Yeah,
and RFK's reply was, "I can't wait to eat McDonald's again. Bring back tallow."
exactly.
My God, you guys who may not remember or might be too young, McDonald's fries fried in beef tallow. The McDonald's fry reputation comes from that era.
Yep,
And you don't understand how amazing those fries were fried in beef tallow.
exactly.
It is the greatest fast food fry you will ever eat. Chicken McNuggets like fried up in beef tallow.
Everything's better in beef tallow.
Yeah, so if that's the kind of thing we get because he starts, giving out the blocking the seed oil stuff, that's exactly what we want, man. That's the kind of thing where I know I think it was Razorfist who was like, would I trust RFK on defense? Would I trust him on like environmental policy? Probably not. Do I
No,
trust him at HHS? Hell yeah. This
I mean,
is
the guy is still a Democrat. I mean, the
yeah.
coalition involves some moderate Democrats and some center-leaning Republicans. But yeah, you're not going to put RFK in charge of something that is going to have, major effect that would be more of Democrat ideals than the Republican ideals. But in HHS, perfect.
Yeah.
It's something that he's passionate about, and we know that he'll actually do something.
So it's funny, the one of the main vectors of attack they're going after him besides the vaccine issues is the fact that he said that he wants fluoride taken out of the water.
Right.
And here's what I'll tell you, because I managed healthcare offices, specifically dental, for a while. And there is a problem that a lot of young kids get in very like in the parts of Virginia, fluoridated water is very. This isn't happening with people who have well water. This is happening
Fluorinated water.
where it's
Yeah.
fluoridated water. They get something called fluorosis, which is actually too much fluoride, and it starts creating spots on their teeth.
Right.
Now, it's not unhealthy. It doesn't, in the fact that it doesn't create cavities or something, but it just causes specks on their teeth that are permanent and don't go away. There's nothing to go away. That it is internal because they consume. That means they have consumed a fluoride overdose, if you will, not something that like causes you to die, but something where they're getting too much fluoride. And that's because now that in the modern environment where kids are brushing every day with fluoridated toothpaste,
Right.
and they're getting fluoridated water, and the fluoridated water is being used to cook in all the
Cook
foods,
everything.
it
Yeah.
does actually create too much fluoride. All the studies that they refer back to in the 1950s where fluoride helps reduce, and fluoride 100% is a chemical in small doses that is capable of preventing cavities.
It can be helpful,
It can
but
be helpful,
we're
but
overdoing it.
this was studied in places where fluoride was naturally occurring at higher rates in the waters that people drank. And
Well,
so
I mean,
then
look at
we
how many things
pumped it
are
into the water.
supposedly good for us or supposedly bad for us that they've been completely wrong on. How many times has eggs flip-flopped from being bad for you to good for you to bad for you again to good for you again? What about MSG? I mean, MSG is still thought of as one of the worst ingredients you can possibly use, and there's nothing in those studies that actually says it does anything. But yet every time you order Chinese food, it's got to say on it, no MSG was used. But you can go
But
buy
so
MSG off of the shelf at the grocery store
so
and
one of
use it
the
in your own cooking, and it's
and
not an issue.
yeah, and one of the things I point out to people is you also have to look at who's funding the science, quote unquote,
Right.
and most of the studies promoting the use of fluoride in the last 40 years were paid for by sugar manufacturing, like food
Right.
and big sugar, if you will, because the number one most immediate problem from eating too much sugar that is viewable in people is cavities in your teeth,
Hmm.
because sugar immediately rots away your enamel and causes cavities. So if they wanted to offset that, right, even though the chemical in large quantities may do bad things to you, it does prevent cavities, and so you won't have that immediately noticeable effect of sugar and too much sugar consumption in children, especially. Baby teeth are way more susceptible because permanent teeth are more have more anyway. So the
Enamel.
point being, like, parents would notice it a lot more if their kids suddenly show up with all these cavities
Right.
because they're eating so much sugar, and so they would probably try to reduce the sugar intake. So you know you you've got to, there's a lot of vested interests again. If the number one, especially high fructose corn syrup, which
Corn
is
syrup.
concentrated sugar, sure, it's like crack sugar.
Yeah.
That stuff gets on your teeth, and it'll get down there. It's
Actually, the first thing
yeah,
on my Twitter feed at the moment is breaking: Robert F. Kennedy Jr. allegedly intends to require Coca-Cola to use cane sugar instead of high fructose syrup. Don't know if that's true, but I mean, basically going back to
yeah,
Mexican Coke.
yeah. I mean, there's a taste difference too. I've bought that at
Oh yeah.
Costco, and it tastes better. It does. The difference is high fructose corn syrup can be used in industrialized production at cheaper prices. And don't forget, this is all to how do I put this gently? There's always a political reason for a lot of this stuff, and it's not just that high fructose corn syrup is cheaper to use in industrial like soda production. Where is corn grown? What's one of the states where that is known for growing huge quantities of corn?
I don't know. Idaho,
It
Iowa,
starts with an I. Yeah, Iowa. What is the first state for most political elections in the last 60 years?
up until Biden didn't go there.
Iowa.
Iowa.
So if you're a politician and you're going to let the government, there's a reason we have ethanol in our cars, and that mandate never goes away. And there's a reason high fructose corn syrup is in all this food, and that never gets questioned.
Yep.
Corn is big business in Iowa, and you don't want to upset the first place you got to go to run for president. King. That's why it's in presidential politics. They actually call it king corn in Iowa
Right.
because you don't mess with corn. That's one of the things where when Trump ran in 2016, he actually said some slightly negative thing about corn and ethanol, and people were like, "What? What? Like he's going to lose Iowa?" Yeah, and it eats up engines. It does bad things. So I'm hoping as we get oil cheaper, maybe we can get regular gas back in line too. Point being, there's a lot of vested interest for a lot of different things that are going to be aligned against somebody like RFK, who honestly, at this point, I think MAGA and most of America is probably shifting in our thoughts and alignment into where he's talking about. Like, we want less chemicals in our food. We want it to be more natural. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's where you're even seeing somebody like Jillian Michaels, crossing the aisle and voting for Trump because of RFK, because she's been a Democrat her whole life, but now actually looking at things and listening, having RFK cross that line as well, I got her across the line. That's where this coalition has been so important. And Pinochet's right. Some of JFK's policies and Trump's policies are almost identical. JFK would have been pushed all the way to the right at this point if he was still alive. And RFK is just an extension of that.
to Eric's point, I don't know if Jillian Michaels came out and said she voted for
I'm
Trump.
pretty sure she came out and said it
Did she?
on
But
one of her
but
shows. She said,
everything
"Yes,
on her
I did."
podcasts have been like Trump. Like I'm a lot. Like she had Sage Steele on, and they were talking about. I mean, Jillian Michaels has a like warrior hate for California politics now
Yep.
because of what they like when she's and this is what's interesting is when people have the veil lifted from them because it's in something they have a lot of expertise on.
And
So
part of her veil lifting was Anna Kasparian coming on and talking to
yeah,
her about how it's lifting on Anna.
yeah, but for Jillian Michaels, someone who's a fitness and health expert
Yeah.
living through COVID lockdowns in California where they took it to the nth degree, she's a health expert, right? So when they come out and fitness, and when they come out and tell her, well, people can't go outside and exercise at the beach and get sun,
Right.
she's like, excuse me?
When the main markers were
Yeah.
obesity and lack of vitamin
Yeah.
D.
So it's, and once you get that lifted on one subject, you start thinking, what else am I getting
What else are they
misled on?
lying about?
It's a great, and it's a journey and it starts, but I think she's coming around to it. And not everybody comes 100% to our side, but there's areas where we can agree.
But
And this
that's
is,
that's where politics used to
yeah,
be. It
yeah. And
wasn't
that's,
100% of everything all the time. It was, yeah, we talk about things. It was, we we have the same vision for the country, just differ on how to get there. And we don't have
correct.
that same vision for the country between both parties now. So
And that's why I actually
like I
love the
said, I think the
RFK pick.
political realignment is happening before our eyes.
That's,
You're
yeah,
seeing the parties flip. The Republicans are no longer the party of Wall Street. The Democrats are. I mean, they're the ones with all the money. They're the ones with all the mega donors. You're seeing that flip as well a little bit back to the middle, because even some of the tech bros are now looking at it and going, we thrive under Republicans. We don't under Democrats. So, I mean, you're seeing a whole bunch of things just realigning before our eyes, and it's an interesting time to be watching politics.
Yeah, that's why I love the RFK pick, because RFK getting in at HHS and making tangible changes that people see will do more to help the Republican Party gain long-term traction. Because what we're having a problem with right now, the Republican Party is the de facto second party to the Democrats, so you have to kind of live with that reality. So to realign the Republican Party, you need to start doing stuff like that, but you also need voters to trust that when they vote for Republicans, these are the results they're going to get. And the Mitch McConnells of the world have been sabotaging that against Trump. And that's why when Trump's not on the ticket, the Republicans tend to lose a lot of votes, because a lot of these low propensity or crossover voters trust Trump to do these things, but they don't yet trust implicitly the Republican slash conservative party members to do these things. So we need to build that trust by actually showing that we're going to pursue and achieve results.
And I think that's where you may see that there may not be as big of a problem getting some of these appointments through because, well, we got rid of McConnell. So we've got Thune. I know most people aren't happy about that. I will wait and see how he actually does things before I go completely nuts on him, because the Senate is a weird animal. I mean, Thune's been around a long time, so he at least knows the people. He has been the whip before, so he knows how to make sure he's got the votes he needs. But one of the things you're seeing from this election with this mandate is Trump's coattails got them the power in the Senate. It was Trump's coattails that got some of these people elected. And I think they're going to remember that and know that when they're trying to get these appointments through, that you wouldn't even be the ones doing the votes on these guys if you didn't have Trump's coattails get you this power. So that may go a little ways towards getting some of these in.
Yeah, so our next batches of picks, Chris Wright at Energy, he's a oil guy. It makes perfect sense that he would be Trump's pick.
Yep.
Trump explicitly campaigned on the idea that his administration would be 100% committed to drill baby
Drill,
drill.
baby, drill.
And so getting someone who's, this is funny when they're, the vector of attack on this guy is that he's coming from oil. And I was like, where did Trump ever stutter that he was going to not be doing this? So
Yep.
yeah, and he's a traditional kind of pick for energy secretary. He's got a background especially in Republican politics, having a background in oil is kind of, one of the main places that you'll get an energy secretary. On the plus side, I think he has not done anything to express any hesitation about trying to also pursue nuclear, which is, I think, the two avenues that Trump's administration should focus on in the next 4 years are oil production and nuclear capacity.
Yep.
And if he does that, that's going to lower energy prices so much that it will unleash the American consumer and production. That is the secret sauce to
That's
the
the
American
recipe. Yeah.
economy. Low energy. The United States had an advantage because we were industrialized with low energy costs for years. And when we started changing that is where we really ran into issues. Doug Collins as Veterans Affairs. He's out of Georgia, former congressman. He's going to sail through.
He was pretty
I
effective as a
Yeah,
congressman, so I like that pick.
yeah. I mean, he's as these picks go. This is a guy who's going to be like January 20th when Trump's inaugurated. Like by 2 p.m. when the Senate is doing those first votes, he's going to be one of those guys that's immediately, you know,
Yeah.
and probably
Just
pick.
up and down vote. Yeah.
And in fact, I would think he's the one of those guys where the Democrats would not even bother fighting, would just vote to, so they can, because the Democrats are going to want to be like, look, we gave him all these reasonable picks, like
Right.
so he's one that's going to sail through. Christy Nome as Homeland Security. I think the Democrats might be unified against her, and she may lose one or two just because she's got some baggage from the book she wrote. But I think she gets. I don't think she's even going to be someone where there's a tiebreaker.
She's going to cut
Homeland,
the K9 force by
yeah,
90%.
Yeah, Homeland Security personally too. She's personally going to do it.
Yeah.
She'll grab that AR-15 from the Homeland SWAT guys and be like, bring them in one at a time,
Bring the K9 unit in.
and bring that other one in
It's time
because
to
it
cull
looked
their
at.
numbers.
She's going to be like, and bring that therapy dog too. It looked at me funny. So,
And
no,
yes, Josh Hammond. Kristi Noem is hot. Well, she
yeah.
used to be. Was she
You know
beauty
who
pageant
you know who
or
thinks Kristi
model?
Noem's really attractive is Corey
Yeah,
Lewandowski.
Lewandowski.
Yeah, it's there is a fairly well vetted rumor that her and Lewandowski have been engaged in relations,
Extramarital
extramarital.
relations.
So, not that I care about that. I'm just people should be aware because that's going to be a vector
That's
of
going to get
attack on
brought
her,
up. Yep.
and it's not going to be. Now, I do have some issues with the Kristi Noem did do some things initially during COVID that I disagree with, but that's true even with DeSantis, even with Trump. So I'm grading on a strong curve there where I don't hold the Republican governors as accountable if they made the change
If they opened up
once
fairly
everything was there.
quickly.
Yeah. And so the problem Kristi Noem faced was she's the governor, like I mentioned with Burgum, she's the governor of a state that has got a giant chunk of federal lands. And so she was constantly fighting the federal bureaucracy to try to open up all the things she wanted to get opened up.
Lord Shax asks, who is Lewandowski? Corey Lewandowski was an advisor to Trump in the first term. He constantly looked coked up and twitchy.
Yeah, he's
Skinny
out of
guy.
New Hampshire. He was a deputy campaign. He was, I think, the primary campaign manager for Trump in 2016, and then he got replaced by Kellyanne for the
Conway.
general election
Yeah.
because that was Corey Lewandowski was famous because they tried to get rid of him by showing the video where he allegedly attacked and shoved a Washington reporter.
Yeah. So
And
he was a campaign advisor. He was fairly well known back in 2016.
yeah, and
Kind of
Eric
like
brings
Bannon, but
yeah,
Bannon's been more
yeah,
stayed in the news, where Lewandowski just kind of disappeared a bit.
yeah. Eric brings up one of the other conservative attack points against Noam, which was that she vetoed and fought against basically a bill that would have kept trans women,
Trans
whatever,
athletes out of.
where you're born a boy and you're deciding you're a girl athletes. Because I can never get confused a lot with. I guess that makes them trans women, right? Is that the
Sure.
which born a boy playing as a girl out of college athletics, and
Males
she
and
would
female
yeah
sports.
yeah so she wouldn't like go against that, but I think she's come around on that now that she saw where she is also a political animal, so she's come
Yeah, she
around
is.
where that is. She's basically, and I don't want to sound like bad about this, she's a younger, more attractive Palin in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So um so she's trying to get her bona fides out of this one. She would be a good person if she gets groomed up and supports Trump to maybe, if Thune retires in a couple years, she might be a more reliable senator out of there. So anyway,
I'm just reading the tickers scrolling by beneath us. Seltzer announced in a new op-ed that she's done with election polling after her Iowa poll
oh yeah, she's
wrongly
retiring.
predicted.
Yeah,
It's like you didn't have a choice.
BTFO
You
and
were cooked
Seltzer.
the
Yeah,
second that happened.
I do love all the what is it? Success has many fathers, but failure. But I forget what the saying was from it. But all now that the FEC filings are coming out, and we're seeing where all this massive amount of money was getting spent by the Harris campaign, and now everybody's just like nitpicking every single thing. So,
Yeah. Well, especially since she's still running a deficit.
I don't know, Josh, to answer your question about Gnome. I don't think they're big. I think they're probably
I think they
relatively.
were just fine because she
Yeah.
was either a model or in beauty pageants. So, I mean,
I mean,
that's what got her noticed.
I'm gonna say out of the nominees, Tulsi probably. If we're doing a hottest award, Tulsi probably takes hottest.
I don't know.
Have
I
you
think,
seen the pictures of her surfing? Tulsi takes hottest.
yeah, I've seen the pictures of her surfing, but I'm not sure on that one. I think Noam's Nome's better looking, and the I don't know. I've got to see some more of the new press secretary appointment
Well,
before I make that call.
that's not a cabinet level like
No,
aim, yeah.
cabinet, yeah,
But I mean, so the biggest disagreement we've had on the bullpen is whether Gnome or Tulsi are hotter.
yeah.
Agree to
Well,
disagree, Brahma.
I haven't seen Nome up close. I've seen Tulsi up close.
I love that the Google search history and someone in your house and be like, "What are you looking at?" It's like I have to vet for my political program. Thank you. This is
I mean,
all
hell,
research.
we should he should appoint Anna Paulina Luna for something, and then that question is answered
No, no
automatically
more
there.
House members. He gets no
Well,
more
I
House
know no
members.
more House members, but I'm saying if you're going to try to get the hottest cabinet members, you
So
would throw her in,
the all right. So here's where all right. The
and
only
Hava
House
is as well.
I will only allow one more House member to shift in the immediate term, which is I would like DeSantis to appoint Byron Daniels to Senate out of Florida.
Donald's.
Byron Donalds, yeah, out of Senate in Florida
Well,
because
the
he's the
rumor is if things go sideways with Gates, that he would be appointed to the Senate.
there is no way
I
DeSantis
don't
is
think it'll
effing.
happen.
I will put my friggin' house on the line to say that DeSantis will never appoint Gates to the Senate.
I'm pretty sure of that as well.
Yeah, Gates might run for that Senate seat when it comes up after, in special election, but DeSantis doesn't like Gates and he's never going to appoint him.
Yep.
So,
Well, we got a few more to go through, don't we?
no, those are
Or
the
is that the bottom?
official.
Okay.
These are the official cabinet ones.
So
So the
that's the
ones
cabinet. Yeah.
like Tulsi has been nominated for. Let me take that off the screen. Tulsi's been nominated for DNI, which is not technically a cabinet position, even though it's a Senate confirmed position.
Right.
Although, I think it's weird. Even though they're not a secretary making them a cabinet member, I think UN ambassador is considered a cabinet level appointment. So Stefanik
Yeah. I'll bring up the list of the rest of them that have
and
been.
DNI is also considered a cabinet level appointment. It was created post 9/11 as well, along with Department of Homeland Security.
Let's see if I can blow this up at all.
So that means like after they get confirmed, they would have access to cabinet level like briefings and capabilities. EPA administrator is not a cabinet position because the EPA is actually a department under I think energy
And we've
or
got
health. Where does I don't know which one EPA falls under.
Homeland, doesn't it?
It might be under Homeland. It's a sub agency, is what it
Right.
is. But even though the head is appointed and confirmed,
So National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, which Ratcliffe did a lot of work.
Ratcliffe was
getting
DNI
rid
at
of
the end of the previous Trump term.
Right, and he specifically said he would prefer to go in as the CIA director rather than DNI, um, because he could actually affect the CIA if he had control over the CIA. The the DNI, technically, he's going to be answering to Tulsi Gabbard because she's going to be over the CIA, the FBI, all the three-letter agencies, essentially, all the national intelligence. But him being in the CIA directorship specifically means he can do a little bit more there. So it sounded like he actually turned down the DNI job this time to be the CIA director. So Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, who most recently in 2022 ran for governor of New York, I
Lee
believe.
Zeldin is the
Right?
hero of the Republican House because he drug several
His
seats over the
coattails,
line.
yeah, his coattails. He didn't get in, but he got a whole bunch
Yep.
of
And we ended up losing
seats.
a couple of those seats even with Trump on the ballot because
Yep.
because a presidential election increases turnout for everybody. Zeldin ran in an off year, so his increase in Republican turnout helps swing those seats.
Yep. Ambassador to the UN, Elise Stefanik,
She's
White
fine.
House counsel,
I mean,
and
Nikki Haley was
she
the
started
ambassador
off a
last
little bit
time. Yeah.
squishy. I mean, early in her career when she was getting brought up and stuff, I wasn't real happy with them putting her in the current position she was in within the House. But I think Elise has probably gotten on board with things. a little bit more than she was originally, because she was. I mean, she's one of those more, uh, probably more moderate Republicans. She wasn't as conservative as everybody else, and that's probably just a function of her being a New York Republican. So
Oh, real quick, we got some breaking news that's not great.
that doesn't sound good.
This is a tweet. The apparently the Biden administration, Joe Biden specifically, just authorized the use of U.S. supplied long-range missiles by Ukraine for strikes inside of Russia.
Genius.
Which, by the way, just to reiterate, Putin had specifically said that action would be considered an act of war by the United States or NATO if they had done it against Russia.
Yeah,
So they're trying to blow this up before Trump can get in and to fix it.
yeah, that's what that would seem like.
Yeah.
Let's
Uh,
just jump, feet first into World War III, because we're on our way out.
yep. Again, and this is part of like with getting into the Stefanik foreign policy thing. She's going to be at UN. She's going to basically be Trump's mouthpiece for his foreign policy. The UN ambassador doesn't really do a whole lot independently.
That
So
was
there's
Nikki Haley in the last
yeah, that
one,
was Nikki Haley. So you go up, you make a little speech, and you make the vote the way the Trump administration wants. In this
which,
case,
as much as I don't like Nikki Haley, she was good in
yeah,
that position last time. That's
yeah.
kind of
So
what made her
yeah,
famous.
the main thing that Stefanik's going to be doing up there in the UN, at least in the immediate term, is vetoing anti-Israel,
Correct.
resolutions out of the UN Security Council.
Since that's all they seem to do.
Famously, it was a break in our normal protocol that the Biden people allowed by abstaining, not vetoing and not voting for, but abstaining, allowing UN Security Council resolutions against Israel in the actions they're taking against Hamas right now.
Yeah. And the condemnation of Netanyahu, all that kind of stuff. So,
Uh, yeah, to Slendernick's point, they'll blame Trump for it 5 seconds after he takes office for this. I think Putin is smart enough to know he
yeah,
might. This is interesting because Trump won. This is probably going to save us from World War III because Putin will probably say, I think Trump's already talked with his people and he's already talked with Zelensky. And
yep,
shocker, Zelensky came out just like yesterday saying, I think that a negotiated peace is probably something that we're going to have as an outcome shortly. Which,
basically because he was told, we'll just stop giving you weapons. You have no choice.
yeah, the
You're not
spigot's
getting
getting
weapons
cut
from
off.
Europe. So, what are you going to do? I mean, there was never a win for Ukraine in this situation, because they were fighting somebody who has nukes. You don't win a war when you don't have nukes and the other side does. It's just not going to happen. So,
So I
this
think
is
Putin
just a
actually
ramp up.
I think Putin is restrained actually because he's going to get the end goal he really wanted, which
Yeah,
is he's going to get Crimea
Crimea.
officially recognized as Russian. The
Yep,
Donbass is going to be an independent, neutral territory, and then Ukraine will agree to never join NATO. And those are the three
correct.
terms that he is willing to end the war if they're accepted. And honestly, for Ukraine, those are favorable terms given that they're still losing.
Yeah, and remember, the whole thing started because Biden and Kamala were pushing to get Ukraine into NATO against every treaty we've ever signed. That was the red line that was being crossed that started this all off. So, yeah, I think Putin will probably recognize that this is Biden being an idiot and not reflecting of America or the Trump administration coming in. And I think he's still scared to death of Trump.
Yeah, it's more that he also knows that here's the dirty little secret. Once Trump and his new energy secretary and the rest of his team get in and we start pumping oil out of the ground here, the
Well,
entire
and gas,
yeah, oil and gas, the entire market for Russia collapses because Europe's going to buy the LNP, liquefied natural LNG, liquefied natural
natural
gas
gas.
from us, which is what most of their industry runs on. So we'll just export that to them. we're going to drop our own energy prices. Oil per barrel, the last time Trump was in office, hit freaking negative. A
Yeah.
barrel of oil was negative $3. Meaning someone would pay you $3 to buy this oil so they didn't have to store it because there was so much getting pumped. And when oil is that cheap, if oil is even like $30 to $40, Russia can't afford wars.
Well, and Russia has made more due to the U.S. sanctions and tariffs during this war than they would have if we hadn't sanctioned them. I mean, they were making money hand over fist during this whole thing because of them selling gas and oil. So, yeah, we'll see how it plays out. I mean, Zelensky would be smart not to use those missiles if they're already talking with Trump and already working on putting something together, like Bush has said. I mean, we've all seen reports, don't know how true any of them are yet. So,
Well, Zelensky, I think, is under the right understanding that as soon as they allow elections again
that
in
it's game
Ukraine,
over.
he's probably getting his ass kicked out hard. So,
Yeah,
I mean, Ukraine is one of the most corrupt nations ever created. And I say created because the Ukraine was kind of made up out of whole cloth, like a lot of Eastern
right.
European countries in the last few hundred years. And just, it is just a cesspool of, it's like, it's the Sicily of Eastern Europe,
Right.
where it's just people born into crime factions and crime families. And no mistake, that's also where the Bidens were getting kickbacks at high levels. That we these are all public. What's great is this is all public record, because
Yep.
Burisma, a natural gas company out of Ukraine, clearly needed Hunter Biden's expertise as a board member.
Well, and so many other politicians' children are working or on boards in companies in Ukraine. And it's all just kickbacks everywhere you look.
I'm glad that Eric really liked my Sicily of Eastern Europe line.
Right.
I used that the other day talking with my father about Ukraine. I'm gonna adopt it. That's my standard description now for Ukraine.
Run with it. Yeah. Well,
They
and
just want to wet their
Crimea.
beak, Brahma. They just want
Yeah.
to wet their beak.
Well, and Crimea, I mean, aren't most of the people in Crimea still speak Russian, right?
All right, so not just Crimea, but the Donbass. So most of that eastern section of Ukraine is actually
Still identifies almost
is
as Russian.
is how do I ancestrally Russian. They like Crimea has been a Russian port since friggin' Ivan the Terrible. I mean, it goes
Right.
back like thousands of years. Ukraine didn't exist. Ukraine is not a natural country. Like
Yeah. Kind of
so
like
Don
Palestine.
yeah, so Crimea and Donbass were actually, I think if you go back, I mean, should pull up that Tucker interview with Putin where he gives the entire like historical
Yeah.
backlog,
The
like
2 hours of just
yeah, like
talking off the top of his head
yeah,
about the
here's
history of
like
Russia.
200 years ago, the natural Russian boundary was here, which was the Donbass. That was that meant that was all Russia, and the other
Hmm.
part was fake Ukraine.
Even prior to the Soviet Union,
Yeah,
it was Russian. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I think Zelensky's going to get out while the getting's good. I mean, Zelensky is not a great hero that we should be. I mean, he suspended elections. He blocked churches because he thought Eastern Orthodox churches were too pro-Russian because they were Eastern Orthodox.
Meanwhile,
So
he's fine with the
yeah,
Azov battalion.
yeah, but the Azov battalion. So it's a corrupt thing. I'm sure that Zelensky's net worth is now several $billion, and that'll be fine for him. Much like when Yasser Arafat passed away, and he was the leader of those impoverished Palestinians for decades, and his net worth at passing away was about $6 billion.
Right.
And it was like, oh, so that's where all the aid money went. So okay, got it.
Ghost strike about Zelensky. He's a CIA plant.
Yeah, he was there after
Yeah.
they did a color revolution in 2014. Victoria Nuland was all over that, on who was part of the Obama administration, and she's also in the Biden camp. Afterwards, they got out the quote unquote pro Russian elected government of Ukraine, so that they could get one that was anti-Russia and that would join NATO, because that was one of their goals. Although they wanted to play more of a long game, Joe Biden accelerated faster than they thought, than the Obama people were going to. But Newland, once she was in with Biden, because they were getting that Ukraine money, wanted to accelerate it, because Ukraine and NATO is an even easier way to funnel money through Ukraine to funnel back to the Bidens, because
Yep.
then they're getting new, NATO level support for their, funding. So not,
It's all a huge mess.
but luckily Trump is planning to end that spigot. Hopefully everybody else is okay with that.
Yeah. Well, and he's also talked about some other things that he's going to do, as far as you can't work in big pharma after working in the FDA and working to approve or disapprove of drugs. So, I mean, yeah, he sees what the corruption is, and hopefully we will be seeing actions taken in multiple areas, including Ukraine and Russia. But yeah, the authorizing the long range missiles is just idiotic by Biden. That's
It
just
is,
the last
yeah.
gasp of the military industrial machine. So we got just a couple more to go through. Holman, I think, is going to be huge, as the borders are. Um, Huckabee as ambassador to Israel, probably a good move there. I mean, good position for Huckabee. And then, of course, we've got the Doge with Elon and Vivek. So
Yeah, which is no worry about it. There's no worries about appointments there. That's a government. That's a presidential, like,
he's just making czars,
executive. Yeah,
essentially.
yeah. So you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
It's, he's going to be directly delegating some of his, authority on those ones.
Yep. And I'm looking forward to what Elon and Vivek are going to do there, because I know Elon is, he will look at everything, look at the budget, audit everything with an autistic, level of detail. So that should be fun to watch what they. I mean, they said that it's going to be completely transparent, so I can't wait to see all those numbers coming out, all the crazy crap
Mm-hmm.
that we're spending on, and hopefully they can actually make some change. Vivek was on this morning on the Sunday shows, basically saying, "Yeah, there is a ton we can do just through executive action to remove a good portion of the administrative state." So, I mean, between Elon and Vivek, they're going to hit the ground running, just going directly after the administrative state. And if it's something that can be done by executive order or executive action, which a lot of it can be because a lot of it was created by executive action and executive order, they can do it immediately. Just
Mm-hmm.
tell Trump, yep, you do this executive order and you've cut out this percentage of unneeded bureaucracy.
I'm really hoping that we can get the friggin' pipeline actually finished. That's been ready to be
A
finished.
Keystone,
Yeah,
yeah, that would be
because
nice.
that would be awesome. Just full bore. I'm really looking forward to paying less than $2 a gallon for gas in the near term. It's going to be
Well, and
awesome.
just the U.S. not being dependent on anybody else, become net exporters again, get the nuclear going, get it all. uh, We thrive, as we said earlier, when we're producing energy.
And it also it this is what people also don't think about. One of the reasons Saudi Arabia was willing to do the Abraham Accords and a lot of the other things is because under a net exporter of energy United States, Saudi Arabia has less
They're weakened
influence and they're
significantly.
weakened. And if they're weakened, they're going to rely on having. Here's the funny thing: Saudi Arabia knows Iran doesn't like them and they don't like Iran. And you know who the most reliable partner in the Middle East they could have would be? Israel.
Israel,
So Saudi Arabia is willing to make the deals with Israel to buttress against Iran when they don't have the, how do I put this? They don't have the shield of their oil to protect them, because if Saudi Arabia becomes very not important when the US is exporting oil at that level.
right?
And so the reason Saudi Arabia basks in the protection of all these other countries in the world is because they know that keeping Saudi as it is what pumps oil to all their countries like China and Europe and the United States when we're not an exporter. So we all are willing to protect Saudi Arabia. I mean, we went to war with Iraq in 1990 and 91 because Kuwait, which is a country the size of like Vermont,
Right.
pumps so much of the kind of oil we like to use. So we sent multiple divisions, like our entire third army over there to free it and protect it and to protect Saudi Arabia because mainly Saudi Arabia because Hussein had basically telegraphed
Hussein was lobbing missiles
that he
in.
was going to Saudi Arabia next to get because he wanted to because he knew and he was correct if he managed to capture Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and control all of that oil production, we would have made a deal with him to let him keep it because we would have wanted
Well,
the oil.
we placed Hussein, so yeah.
Yeah. Specifically H.W. Bush when he was CIA director. Just saying. It was
Yeah.
all coming back to that. So
Every time we put somebody in power, it comes back to bite us. And
yep.
then we end up in a war over it.
Yep. So I can tell you that I would expect a lot more Middle East peace deals coming out of probably the next 18 months after our oil production gets really online. That's when the prices will start dropping and when they start having to make the adjustments.
Yeah.
So within 18 months, there's probably going to be Abraham Accords Part 2. And trust me, most of those Middle Eastern countries don't like the Palestinians. They don't take them. This is not a controversial thing to say. They genuinely don't. They don't do anything to take them in. They don't do anything to actually house them. They will send money towards them to keep them messing with Israel, but they don't really care that much about the Palestinian people. So they will turn on a dime if it means protecting their own interests to let Israel do what it needs to do.
Which is why you're seeing, who was it? Qatar is turning everybody out from Hamas.
Yeah, as
I
soon
mean,
as
you're
Trump
seeing
was
all
officially
those,
announced the
yeah,
victor,
like
it
the
was like,
day
you guys get
after.
the F out.
Yep, we're done with you. Get out.
And
You're
you know
gonna
what? And no other Middle Eastern country would take them because they're like,
right.
nope, we don't want to deal with it either.
Just like none of the Middle Eastern countries will take any people from Palestine. They don't want them there. So yeah, I mean, we've already seen major effects kind of being whispered, and rumors of things just from Trump being elected, not even getting into power yet. But it's going to be an interesting 4 years. It's going to be a fun 4 years. And yeah, Radioactive's right. They're not going to be able to bring on nuclear plants within, the next few years. It'll take quite a while to build them out and get all the infrastructure in place, all that kind of stuff. But if you start commissioning them now and getting them going, there's not going to be much point in not doing it. And the hope is we're grooming JD Vance to, take over for 8 years after Trump. I mean, sure, it's rare that kind of thing ends up happening, but I mean that's the hope, is that this is like we've said, a complete political realignment within the country that actually can win elections for decades to come. So we will see, but we're about at that time. What do you got coming up this week, Chad?
We got our Tuesday gaming stream here on your channel, so that'll be fun. I don't know what I think we're going back to party animals.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the plan, as long as enough people can show up, and otherwise it might be COD. Then,
Yeah,
um,
COD's just hard to interact with chat.
yeah, but if we did the quad screen COD, it might be more fun.
Yeah.
And then Friday we got the Ascendant Art podcast. Got Slender Dad over there as the co-host on that channel, and that's Friday 9 p.m. Eastern. I was on yesterday with Script Doctor on his channel doing scripts on Saturday, and he said he was told me that he was going to try to make it over the next few weeks, try to get on the show and hang out, and that's always fun having someone with that genuine insider knowledge for Hollywood.
Hmm.
So got good things coming up and should be some good shows.
Cool. Um, let's see. We've got like like you just mentioned, the Tuesday stream. Monday and Thursday, I'm on Comics Division's channel. Wednesday, we should have a Christian panel this week. Don't know what the topic is and don't know if we've got a guest yet. I've got to talk with Carrie on that.
Oh, good news for you, Brahma. I just looked at my phone and I just got a notification that you're starting Berman and Borden for Rumble.
Nice. Only 12 hours or 13 hours late, 14 hours late.
Yep.
So, yeah, Josh, that was kind of the consensus is COD wasn't as fun to watch for chat and we weren't as interactive. So, I mean, we'll probably just play that for fun amongst us and maybe record it so that Slender and I can cut it up into small pieces of
As
fun
long as we can
highlights.
get on Mad's level.
Yeah, well, I played with Arcasul last night, and Arcasul and Mad would make an evil, evil team. Arcasul's good, so. But what else? We've got Fridays and an art, Saturday bourbon and boarding. Actually, me and you have to talk about bourbon and boarding. Brian's got to go out of country for a couple weeks, so I don't have a co-host for Saturday nights for the next 2 weeks. So,
Yeah, I don't think I'm doing a script show again the next few weeks, so I could probably help out with that.
yeah, because I don't like doing shows by myself. I'm not that entertaining by myself, and trying to run everything, especially playing all the videos for bourbon and boarding, not easy. So,
Like Soul Assassin, Matt is still working on that channel.
yep.
Yeah,
Well, Matt
it's
will be
coming next
MIA
week.
for another 3 or 4 days, I think, and then we'll see him popping back up probably for Friday night. Yeah, Jaffo, I've only played zombies with you. We were doing the regular multiplayer, and Arcasul was really good there. We'll have to get you in and play some actual multiplayer on teams. That way, I can see what you do against real people. So, because I know I'm not good at it. I'm getting like 10 kills. Arcasul's getting like 44. So I'd love to see what Jaffo can do because he's kind of who carried us through zombies in the beginning. So. Yeah, so I think that's everything. We'll be back here next Sunday, and possibly for Saturday night it'll be me and little Chad, and maybe we can get Brida Slender on there, let her go crazy on hockey. So hope everybody
That's
has a
true.
great
She is
week.
Canadian.
Yeah, she does love the hockey.
I'm going to
So
incept her into our chat by just calling her Canadian. Oh, that's right, Eric. If you're not already, become a Bullpen member.
yeah, thank you
And
to everybody who has already. We got quite a few green names in the chat, and would love to see the rest of them turn green soon. And yeah, one of the perks at the higher levels is you get to game with us sometime. So if you're interested in that, that's like once a month we'll have a game night. Maybe have somebody come in and play Party Animals with us. So who knows? But yeah, thank you for all the support from everybody. Hope you all have a great remainder of your weekend, and we will catch you next time. Here's the intro as an outro.
bye.
Broken system chained and tangled up in lies. Voices shouting, screaming in defeat. Politicians playing games under darkened skies. Hope lost in the dust of the street. Red and blue, colors pouring from the sky. Debates turn to anger, oh, the crowd gets loud. Punches flying in the blink of an eye. Truth buried deep beneath the shroud. whispering conspiracies, drowning in their lies. Echoes of freedom, lost in cries. Spin the wheel of fate, let's see who rise. But this game will bleed you dry. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams we defend, trying to keep alive. Welcome to the bullpen, where the weak will survive. These broken dreams